It's nice to be here again. I hope you can hear me. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's nice to be back here again. And what I mean by that is I've been with PixelClan before I've done this. And the last time I spoke about typography and stuff. But recently I put out something on Twitter and I saw the need for another class because people kept asking how I did it and how I made it happen. I made one illustration of one random guy for an article I wrote, and I saw that there was a real need for me to give what I know to like everybody or whoever needs it, right? So to just get the introductions out of the way, my name is Jeffrey Mamudu. I prefer the Mamudu, and it's I just put this little like transcription here because sometimes they're really hard name for people to pronounce. Um, in the presentation of this course, I've gone ahead to make small illustrations that kind of make things a bit fun to assimilate. It's going to be really simple, fast paced. Maybe not necessarily fast paced, but simple and a bit demanding in terms of quality, but I believe it's something that we can all do. And I'm ready to work with everybody individually to get to a place where they can stand on their own. So I would just like you guys to meet the class prefect or the class monitor. His name is Raymond, and this is an illustration I made with my youngest brother as like the inspiration. He's the coolest kid that I know. So yeah, that's our class prefect, and he's excited to meet everybody. Raymond, the class monitor. Um, but who is Mamudu Jeffrey on a more serious note now? And what do I stand for? What are my design philosophies, and why should I be doing this in the first place? So I'm a multidisciplinary designer. I've been designing for over 6 years now, and everything catches my interest: product design, brand design, typography, illustrations. I've just been doing whatever catches my fancy. I see today, I try to do. So a lot of my work and a lot of the skills that I have been bettered by raw curiosity, to find how people executed on a particular thing and then they made it. And I always believe that I can match that quality of work in my own little way. So yeah, that's me, and I'm currently the creative director of Tensor Units, which I am a co-founder of. I started Tensor Units with my friends. We've grown up together. I started Tensor Units with them because they're all really, really, really great creatives in their own rights, and like we've come together to like create this really cool agency that brings like a refreshing taste to the branding space, especially in Africa. So during the day, this is what I focus on, and in the night, just whatever catches my fancy. But some of you might wonder, like, why am I teaching illustrations? Who gave me the right to do that? And I like my work to speak for itself. So over the past years, I have done different things. Like I said, I've worked on multiple illustrations on different projects, personal and client projects. So this illustration here was made for a branding project that I was doing for a brand called Rumble Jumble. And I thought that for them, the best strategy would be to have a mascot as their front-facing thing. And I created this guy named Trony, right? And it only made sense to me to create the female version, Luna. So you see on the sketch here, I don't know if she made it to these slides, but she has a character sheet as well. So this illustration is to just bring life to that brand with different expressions, because the brand is a hospitality brand. And I thought to myself that to capture that energy, we need characters that are always happy. At least we can control the expressions, the very like 100% on characters that we make that make believe. So, anytime Tronny is serving you, best believe he's always going to have a smile. And that's what hospitality is about. And that's why I created this character. In 2022, a friend of mine named Brendan Oleg, he created this really interesting snack product. that I can't get into so much. But at the time, I was the designer at the brand, and we had to come up with like cool ways to market stuff. When university, then I wanted to do things differently. We've always wanted to do things differently. So we thought, what could be an interesting way to make illustrations and market this stuff instead of just doing the boring thing. Oh yeah, it was 2023. So came up with this illustration to just show how delicious and creamy and interesting things can be. This is from a set of illustrations I created at the time for that brand, and I was learning German too, so I was obsessed with it. And mit Milch means with milk, and it just fits right in, and I just put it in there. The jazz universe, I when I was transitioning from regular web design and product design to other forms of design like graphics design, a friend referred me to somebody to do product for them, to design a website, but somehow I spoke myself into designing his clothing collection because I've always wanted to be like Virgil Abloh, and I saw it as a very interesting challenge, and I took it. You know, that relationship progressed over time and created this really cool fashion brand. I just kept designing things and designing things, and one of the things I designed for him at the time was packaging, and this was the illustration inside each box. So the goal is it was a storytelling brand, telling stories through fashion. So we wanted to just put everything about Olajas into one artwork that shows how much stories we can capture in whatever we make. So like there was the founding date, this 22 year was in 2022. This globe is kind of zoned in on like Africa, but you know, it, because of the other things, like it just got lost in there somehow. This is one of our staple caps. I put that in there. I tried to show that it was both male and female, our target audience. He started the brand. Ola Jazz was started because he was into music and jazz music was like his thing. So put the sax there, put the drums here, the logo. I designed the logo, designed most of the clothes on there. Money was a big thing for us at the time. So we put the ATM, the Naira symbol, Cupid. It was very symbolic too because of the first collection was a thing about losing your passion and falling in love with who you are meant to be and all of that. The hand shaking each other with a tattoo of the Edo State map where it all started. And of course, God has to be represented in everything we do. So the cross there. So yeah, these were early stages of how I started to make illustrations. At some point, I worked at a fintech brand. I think this was 2024. Yeah. So I was creating a bunch of stuff again for them. And this was one of the illustrations I created for a campaign we were doing. I created this lady, created this wallet. I was really proud of this. I did this in Figma. I did this in Illustrator, but most of the shadows and small intricacies I had to move to Figma. It was eventually animated and it was, quite cool. The all holding wallet, that's what I titled it. I really like this hand. This was another illustration I made for the same brand for the website. It was animated as well. So we had this tap to pay or one tap to pay thing. And it just made sense to like animate this on the website and illustrate it on. That was cool. Tampe had a sister brand called CryptPay, and I did the illustrations for that on Christmas Day. I just felt really good and decided to make this, and I did it for them. Some of my most recent work. This is Symphony for Rebuild. Rebuild is a client of Tensor Units, and we've been working on a bunch of stuff for them that we're yet to announce, right? But this was created to show the power of teamwork, right? So like the brand does engineering and manufacturing and all of that, and I was asked to create a ton of illustrations for them, right? But I didn't want to lean too too predictable. So it's like, the best way to show teamwork might be like an actual jazz band or something, and I made it quirky, irregular and stuff. So in my style of illustration so far, I try as much as possible to make it a bit unrealistic. I like to leave hanging things out sometimes. Sometimes it comes mistakenly on accident, but I just leave it in there. Some things are not perfect, some shapes are not like all the way um geometrically correct, but I think that's what adds a lot of character to it. That's what makes you think and wonder, like, why did this person do this way, or stuff like that. So yeah, I've been around, and you can see that even in the process of making my slides for this, I've put in some effort to create some illustrations for the actual slides. I made these in Figma over the past couple of days. I've done all these things again, not by my own power, but from like God, through God who strengthens me always, and a very, very, very good support system in my friends, and who push me with the crazy ideas I have sometimes. Um, so yeah, that's the introduction. That's what I've been up to when it comes to illustrations, or some of what I've been up to. Um, so we'll just briefly talk about the design of this course. So this course is meant to just show the different levels of illustration that you can possibly get to. Right, we're going to start from like the simplest things to the most complex things. But in terms of complexity, is it depends on how far you're willing to push things. You've probably seen some illustrations that are really flat and other ones that are super rendered. The difference is just the style and the amount of time, or the goal of the designer or artist at the time. So for us, it's going to be beginner friendly, but we must always strive to do the hard things. That's the way we stand out. We can't just stop where it's okay to stop. We must try to push forward. And even though you stop where it's okay to stop, that's fine, because you've pushed yourself. The goal is not to just get comfortable. If something becomes easy for you, then you have to try to, surpass that all times. So I keep doing that even till today. The progression of my illustrations have come a very long, very, very, very long way. I wish I could show some of the old ones, maybe in the next class, but it wasn't always like that what you just saw. um, so we're going to create 3+ illustrations, and I'm not sure of that number now because of time, but the minimum would be 3. So one in each class. One in each class. It depends on how fast we are. There'll be assignments and there'll be real-time feedback. So the sketches and Figma files will be shared after each session. So when I go over what I design, I'll share the sketch. I'll share maybe a Figma file of mine, so that you can easily go back and reference how I've done things, so that you can create your own. And there will be a way we can submit. Maybe send me a Figma link and I can drop comments and stuff, just to make sure that everybody sort of individually gets to work at their own pace, and I can solve your problems where they really hurt, stuff like that. So another question is, why illustrations? Why are they so important? I can't speak for everybody here. I don't know why you guys are here, but I'll speak for myself. Illustrations are very, very interesting. They give us a different sense to things because of how much you can achieve with them and the kind of stories we can tell. For instance, if you are working on branding, and like I said, for Rumble Jumble, I can tell that there's no human being on this planet that's always going to be happy serving whatever they're serving at a restaurant. But I know that the character I create is always going to be happy because it lives in the universe of Rumble Jumble. You have the power to create that, right? On a visual level, that's more philosophical, but on a visual level, your line quality, consistency, composition, and storytelling are things you can create. It's not like going to get a stock image that sometimes you cannot, really change particular things. Maybe we AI now, but some when you think about cartoons and CGIs and live action, you see that a lot of things are really, really impossible happen in cartoons, and that's the edge to it. So illustrations do lean there for brands and UI and stuff like that. So these are the reasons why I consider illustrations, like line quality, consistency, composition. I can always make MJ here wear a green hoodie or a purple one, and it's always going to be clean. It's always going to look however I want it to look. Irregular, unrealistic, realistic. That's the power. You get to play some form of God and create your own universe here. They're also really, really cool to animate, like you can see that I've done here. You also have the power to choose how their eyes look like, or how their faces move, and their expressions, mannerisms, and stuff when you are talking about individuals now and personas, you know. So the goal with what we're doing here is to tell stories. That's the ultimate thing. That's what we should strive to do. We don't want to create things that are bland and boring, or things that don't strike like your thoughts in people's heads when they come across it, you know. So that brings me to what we're going to be doing today, or throughout the session, the duration of this course in all three sessions. We are going to be diving into the world of tennis, you know. How I thought it was really hard to come up with stuff to make because I tried to consider everybody's skill level. So I was fighting back and forth, you know, what do I expose these people to? But somehow it fell on tennis. I can't even explain why, but I just thought of tennis and it worked. So I thought of Lagos, and if Lagos had a tennis competition called the Lagos Open. I just wanted some filler text. So these are just other texts here. This is not a real event. This is just like, for us here in our own universe, because we can do whatever we want, right? Um, so these are the illustrations we are going to be making. Um, in these illustrations, right, I've been able to kind of break things down into like simple, you know, complex, a bit more complex. Um, I like this one. I like this one so much because Ikoyi thing on top of the tennis ball. But let's assume that Lagos State government gave us a gig and they said we have this really cool tournament coming up and we want it to be illustrative. What are you going to do about it? You know. So these are just some marketing materials that I've come up with to create. So this has a tennis ball. Um, in terms of complexity, I try to just do a circle, but how we need to make the circle interesting. If I teach you to just illustrate a circle, you wouldn't value it as much, right? But if we are making a quirky tennis ball um that's a bit weird, that's not geometrical, you know, that's a bit more interesting, you know. Can we add environments to the space and do a little abstraction of the Lagos of the National Theatre, you know, and have that ball coming out like it was served from in there, you know. And in this universe too, the waiters serve balls, you know, like it's a coupon on the service term in tennis. You know, what if we are serving balls here instead of actual like food because it's a tennis thing, right? So these are the three. There's a fourth one though. That one I can't preview because I'm not done. I think that one's really interesting. If you notice, I try not to keep things flat in my stuff. I try to bend things in proportions, and that's some taste I've built over time because of the things I've been exposed to. I've been exposed to work from other, you know, very conventional artists that like to warp perspective and stuff. It makes things look a bit more interesting. So you see that in the sketches, I hope this thing plays. Yeah, in the sketches, when I was sketching for this stuff, before the illustration, it usually starts flat. So, boy, I'm like, that looks boring. What if I bend it and make the arm bigger, or the camera is like at a weird angle and like just shooting him from up there? What if, you know, like we put more stuff into perspective and then there's a big hand for the girl? So I just keep playing with stuff like this. This is meant to be the fourth illustration, right? Uh, but yeah, I'm yet to complete that. But in all of this, the idea is always to keep things interesting and keep things fresh. Try not to be too flat with it, because that way you can capture more emotions and make it look more realistic even without rendering so much. So back to Raymond again. He's asking us to move to class, and I'll just go to my Figma file now and we'll start to create the first illustration. So um this this is, again, this is the preview, and this is what we're going to be creating, or this is what we're going to attempt to create. So I'll just take this to another file and I'll briefly go over what we're looking at in Figma. I hope everybody here is kind of like, somebody has a question. Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, sorry, we're not seeing your other stuff that you're showing. So for like
Wait,
in the last 30 seconds, we could not see what you were displaying.
when I was talking about the video, we give
Yes.
me ah
But I can see the screen now, but it wasn't showing before.
okay. How about now? Can you see?
Yeah, I can see it now. I can see
Okay.
this now. Thanks.
Yeah, I was just saying that the illustrations we always try. All my style allows me to try to bend things in perspective. It makes it interesting for me. It makes it way more interesting when it's not just flat. When it's flat, it's harder to kind of convince people that there's some form of realism going on here, right? To create an illustration, you need form, you need depth, and those things I try to capture with perspective, color, shadows, light, and the likes. But with illustrations
Yeah.
again, you can't go super like realistic.
Realistic.
You,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't go like you can't be too realistic because you want to get things out quickly. You want to be able to animate it, and the more shape layers you add to your overall illustration, it becomes a bit hectic to to handle. Um, so yeah, that was just the sketch process. I was showing that. But another disclaimer here is, yeah, I'm using a digital device to illustrate. That doesn't change anything because I started sketching on paper. If you notice, if you remember, the first slide had when I was showing my work, the rumble jumble thing, all my sketches were on paper. Even till today, I still sketch on paper. So don't think that this layer of execution, sketching things digitally, makes things better. It only makes things a bit easier because now I can undo so many times and I don't have to get an eraser and be rubbing my paper. So yeah, that's the only difference. So don't let that, you know, cloud your judgment as to what you are capable of at all. So yeah, yeah, back to class. I hope you guys can see my screen now. So in Figma, illustrations are usually usually vector illustrations. With all these questions are so many, can we pin these things so that like later I can just attend to them? I see a lot of questions. Can you seriously be possible to, if one doesn't know how to draw? Yes, very possible. I'll get to that at the end. Yeah, just give me a sec. Very possible. Okay. So with this illustration, no, with Figma, the first thing we need to do is to get comfortable with like the software at first, right? And Figma is really easy. When I started doing illustrations, I started with Illustrator. The beauty about this is there's a level of industry standardization to these tools that if you know how to use one, using the other one is not so different at all. And Figma keeps catching up. Figma keeps catching up to you know to all these other guys like Adobe, and just making things really easy for us. So we need to know the difference between raster files and vector files. Your image files are raster files. These are like images are like when you scale in a lot, you start to pixelate. That's the core difference between raster files and vector files. Vector files use some form of mathematical calculation, like vectors in mathematics. Anybody who did like mathematics in school, that vector thing, yeah, that's what it uses. So the more you scale, it just keeps calculating where that shape is meant to go. So it gives you a very crisp version of that. And I love that so much because I like when my lines are sharp and things are really clear. So I can blow this illustration out really large and it maintains the detail for me as much as possible. It's still clean, it's still crisp. I can zoom in and zoom pixelate. The only pixelation that's happening here is because I have a blur on this, but other shapes I don't have any blurs. It will never pixelate, no matter how much I zoom. So that's why vector illustration is cool. It's nice for things like UI. I like to use it for I like to use it for fashion design as well because it just gives me that freedom of scaling up or down, no matter what I've created. You know, you can still get away with it on Raster, but if you're a product designer and you're here and you want to do illustrations for product design, you should be working in vectors and you should already be very, very familiar with Figma. So we'll just take a quick glance at the interface before we get into making this. On the left side, we have our layers panel. Firstly, our layers panel, that's where every shape we create would be logged on there so that we can move things around, whether above or below. Somebody's complaining about not seeing my screen. It's my screen. It got stuck. Let's see your screen. Okay. Okay, great. Um, okay, so yeah, the layers on the left panel. Our toolbar is down here. The two, you can't see my screen. Wait, let me stop and share again. All right, so everybody should be able to see now. Great. Okay. So yeah, I spoke about the left panel that has our layers. That comes in handy because there are a lot of things that you would need to hide or account for, things in the background and things in the foreground. That just allows you to choose what comes before what. I think if anybody's having any screen issues at this point, it is network.
I
Okay.
can see your screen. I could see it too when the others were complaining. So I think it's a network issue.
Yeah, network. Okay.
Yeah. So please, guys, before you send the message, just confirm too that on your end that the network is working. Thank you.
All right. Um. Okay. So yeah, below we have our toolbar, right? This is the frame tool or section two. But most of the time we'll just deal with the frame because that's the artboard. Think of it as your canvas. If you're a traditional painter, the frame is going to be your canvas. Then we have simple shapes. It will surprise you to know how much of these simple shapes come in handy when you are doing illustrations because it's not everything that you have to draw or trace. My own practice leans more towards the art side, but for guys like Duolingo and the likes, they use a lot of simple shapes because their illustrations are really, really simple. Um, the pen tool is going to have to be our best friend. Interesting story. I didn't learn to use the pen tool up until like 3 or 4 years of designing, you know. But I got away with it because I was using Illustrator at the time, and Illustrator had this curvature tool that made it easier to create curves. I did not like the pen tool at all. I still have my problems with it, but we're fixing our differences, and every day it gets better. Um, Text tool, the comment tool, we don't need this. So what we need mostly is this pen tool and the simple shape tool. So what I do is I first create a sketch and just an insight into how I work on this stuff. So I first create a sketch, and I wanted to create a sketch of a ball that was like kind of warped. Again, if we're going to go through the process, right? We'll create a really, really simple ball, try to shade it, and then we'll create something a bit more interesting. So I usually get my sketch. If I draw on paper, I take a picture and I bring it onto Figma. If I draw on my iPad, I just export an image and then bring it on here. So then I create an artboard or a frame. So this is the frame tool. You can go there using this, or you can press F. Most of the time I drag stuff out, but you can find some of the presets. So if you are creating something primarily for Instagram, you can start with an Instagram artboard, but that doesn't really matter. I like to work in squares when it's not for IG. But another good thing about designing in vector, like something like Figma or Illustrator, is you can repurpose it for different screens. Like for instance, now I'd show you the illustration of the server, right? There are different compositions. There's him here, there's him like blown out. So I can keep scaling this and it won't lose any quality. It will feel like I created this primarily for this use case. So that's another thing. So this artboard doesn't necessarily matter, but I just like to work in squares in the beginning. I just like how equal things can get. Then I put my image and then I reduce the opacity. But before we get there, let's create a simple ball. So I show you like what the idea is like. Um, so let's say in a world where everything was perfect and like completely spherical, this would be our base. And what I just did was I went to the shape icon thing. Usually in your own, you might see the rectangle first. So you click on the drop down and then you pick whichever one. So I picked the ellipse one and then I drew this. So tennis balls have these like cutouts, these white lines. I don't know what their names are. Um, so we can do different things. There's so many ways to skin a cat. I can try to keep this geometric shape and create another circle and kind of just overlap it with a stroke. Just give me a sec. So if I overlap it and put a stroke like here, I agree that I have that curve here, right? I already do. So I can just put another one and I'm done, really. That's one way to go about it. Another way, another less beginner friendly way is to use the pen tool. So I can decide to draw this and put my curve in the middle and then drag this out and give it a stroke so that I can visualize what I'm doing. So you notice that for that first one I put a stroke and this one I also put a stroke. Now for the pros, right? I don't know why anybody would do this, but another possible way is to draw the exact thing you want. You draw this, draw the shape, and do this. But you notice that my shape is not as clean, and this thing pisses me off a lot. Let me just drop this like one. So it pisses me off a lot. I don't like when the shapes are wonky, and as much as I like to fiddle with these Bezier curves, it gets frustrating at some point. So these are three ways to do it, and I would expand on this before I go back to the former one, so I'll show you what the process is like through all three of them. For this, right, I've drawn this really wonky shape. Let's say that's how I like my stuff to be, but okay, no, wait, sorry, let's draw it again. So with the pen tool, right, you can create really straight lines by just clicking a point. A line is like the distance between 2 points, right? So you click one point and it gives you another point, and then wherever you draw that point is you create a line in between them, right? But not everything is going to be a straight line. So let's imagine you've created a straight line and then you want a curve in the middle. Figma is so smart that you can edit what you've already drawn by double clicking so that you can play with the node. So you can call it edit mode, or in Illustrator it will give you a direct selection tool. That's what it's called there, but let's just call it edit mode, right? For any shape, you create the shape and then you press enter, and then you can fiddle with it and create more. You can create more anchor points. So these points are called anchor points, these tiny dots here. These anchor points can either be straight or they can have Bezier handles. So now let's imagine that this point, and let's imagine we want to turn this point and this point to curves instead of having this really polygonal shape. We can again click the shape, either double click to enter edit mode, or click it once and then press enter. So now that we're in edit mode, I can select this anchor point and give it a Bezier handle on this properties panel here. So there are different types of Bezier handles. So the first one is when there is no mirroring. That's what Figma calls it, and I explain. So let's imagine we want a perfect curve, and we'll just put this. Right, it creates a curve for us. Now this curve is kind of perfect because you can tell the distance from this Bezier handle to this anchor point is the same with this Bezier handle to this one. That's why we have this, kind of curve. And this rule has been set by Figma because we press this one here that shows mirror, angle, and length. So when we kind of expand this one, you see that it's expanding this other one in whatever angle and in whatever length, right? But sometimes things can become a bit more tricky where we don't want it to be that way. And then we can mirror only one or just the angle, but we can't mirror the length. So it's going to stay in the same angle, but now I can move only this point and then I can get like a smaller slope here, right? And if we don't want any mirroring at all where both of them can move freely in angle and length, then you click the first one. So those are the rules of anchor point and bezier handle mirroring in Figma. So I'm just delete this. Every curve, right? Every curve has an inflection or deflection point, right? If you think of any curve, the reason it's a curve is because it has like that tangential point. So every curve is most likely going to be made up of at least two anchor points, right? This is just mathematical stuff. The more you fiddle with it, the less theoretical this should be. I read about these things, but I didn't really understand until I started to play with them. So there's usually an inflection of deflection point. So most of the time, to cheat the pen tool, when you're creating something that is super curvy, just think about it in polygons first so that your brain can determine where the inflection and deflection points are. And then you can now start to play with it there. So if I want something like this, I'll call length in 15 minutes. So if I want like a U or like this peak, mountain, valley, or whatever, I can do that. A very quick example is the circle. The circle is made of 4 points, right? And they are all mirroring, like they're all equal. That's why it's a circle. They're all mirroring each other in length and angle. So we can attempt to draw the circle with the pen tool. And the easiest way to go about it is to think of it in polygons and think of it in highs and lows. If you look at this thing, you see that there are 4 inflection points, right? There's one here, there's one here, there's one here, and there's one here. There's no low points, they're all highs. So if you put lines between, another illustration is if you draw lines, if you cut it into segments, if you segment the circle. If you also look at, another way to look at it is, there's a point here, like this is the, like, forgetting what they call this in mathematics, but like this is like the peak point of the curve. So here as well, and this point. So we can attempt to draw the circle with the pen tool, but just know that you are going to, instead of drawing your curves, like I said, when you click twice with the pen tool, you have a straight line. But if you drag and hold, you get a curve, right? You get a curve. But now, I think the most beginner-friendly way is to think of it in lines first. Don't think of curves. So we're just going to draw a very, very simple polygon. So 1 point here, we'll put 1 point, give us another point to put a line, put another one, put the third one, put the fourth, wait, no, here, and then just tie it up here. This is the fourth one, and then we'll just tie it up here. So now we have sort of this rhombus-like shape. If we extract this and just deal with it as a separate body, we can now enter this object, double click or press enter, select this point and give it like the complete mirror thing. And if we do the same for each of them, we're going to get a perfect circle, right? So that's one easy way to think about curves. When I first started, I tried to draw, when I was practicing, I'll try to draw the circle, and be drawing the curves, individually. That makes it really wonky. But if you think about things in polygons first, look for the high points and the low points, then you get used to it. So throughout this course, I'm going to most likely be working in this polygonal thing so that it's easier for everybody to kind of understand. And the more you progress, the easier it becomes to just think of these points instead of maybe doing the polygons and then just getting it done, right, like directly. So I'd clear this stuff for now. So back to creating the shapes here. Like I said, there are multiple ways. So the first one is again to create another circle. That's the first one I'm going to do. Create another circle, give it a stroke so that we can differentiate it and remove the fill. So on the properties panel, when you click a shape, it show you properties. This is the alignment, this position, these are constraints for usually for web stuff. Then there's rotation if you want to play with that, but rotating a circle would not show. If we're rotating a rectangle now, that would show, but you can just play with that. These are mirroring tools. So let's say we have, let me just draw a really wonky shape here. Let's say we have a shape now and then we want to flip it to the other side. We want like to just like turn it like 360 on itself. You can do that horizontally and to flip that way. And then if you want to flip it vertically, you press this and it goes the other way, right? That's the shortcut. But you can also right click, go to, I barely use this, so I've probably forgotten where it is now. Yeah, see here, flip horizontal and flip vertical. And they also shortcut says Shift H or Shift V. It comes in handy when you're illustrating because there are some things you have to duplicate and then just flip really, really quickly. Back to the properties panel, you have the dimensions which you can play with. You have opacity, you have corner radius for more polygonal shapes. This has no corner radius, or this has no corner radius. The circle, all the corner radius have reached their maximum. You can also think of it like that. And then we have the stroke panel, the fill panel. Here, there are different ways you can approach strokes. You can align your stroke to the middle. Okay. Posting is here, pause. Sorry. Okay, let's just quickly switch so that I can continue from here. I think they've dropped the new meeting room, guys. Sorry. It's in the chat. Just join from there. It's not interacting with this because we didn't select it at all. So select everything, press enter, go to the shape builder tool. The shape builder tool has two rules. It has the add and the subtract. So the subtract, when you hold alternate or option on your key, it turns to red. And then when you click that portion, it's going to delete it. So you can drag and delete multiple shapes into each other, or you can drag and add multiple shapes into each other. It just depends on what you are looking for. But for us, we need to just remove this excess. So I'll hold Alt, I'll go to the shape. You can remove, in some cases, you can remove just the outline, like here now. Because there's space here, we can add another shape there, and maybe give it another color. Because there's some boundary there that was created by these two shapes, this intersection. So that's not what we're looking for. The more you play with these things, the better it becomes. And I hope I'm just guiding you guys in the right direction. So you press Alt, hold Alt, and when it shows red, you just take this out. I don't know why it has this, but I'm just going to take it out. I couldn't care less about that. Here I can drag out. It just depends on how I want to go about it. I can remove this so I can drag out. So now we have a very, very geometric ball. We can give it the colors of the tennis ball. Make this white. In Figma, you can affect the shade of background, really directly, unlike Illustrator. So we can just give it a darker color. So this is cool. This is something, right? That's one way to do it, using geometric shapes. Let's say the next step is to, let me start again from the beginning. On this one, we would create this same tennis ball in another way. What's the other way I was talking about today? Okay, yes, the pen tool, but the pen tool still using the outline stroke thing. So if you notice on this curve, there are 3 points. Look at it. There's this point, there's this inflection point, this peak point, and then there's the last point. So if I'm to mimic this with a pen tool, just to show you people, usually I will eyeball this sharp, but this is the center of the circle. I'm going to start my points from the same points so that I don't kind of mix things up. Like, to use the pen tool, click once, we'll click once again, and click once again. So this is one of the easiest ways you can get this curve. And all we have to do now is select this anchor point and then just mirror it, and then we have something similar. Now we can play with this so that we increase what the spacing looks like on size, and then this will keep it perfectly straight. Right now it's not straight. When you hold shift, it locks it into 45-degree angles as you rotate, so you can get exactly what you want. Now I'm holding shift and it keeps things kind of perfect for me, right? The whole shape I can decide to increase as well, and then just blow out the stroke again. So this is obviously it's not as geometrical as this. It's not as clean, but it gives it a look. It makes it wonky. It makes it look a bit more organic. So I'm going to just do this, give it the spacing I need. I group it again, so that's one group, and then sorry. I give it the spacing I need. I'll align them, make sure they are good. Then I'll group them so it acts as one unit. And I'll select the stuff beneath and then give it the same alignment rules that I want. Now I can ungroup this again, and then I'll flatten, I'll outline the stroke so that it's treated as a shape. Same thing here. Outline stroke acts as a shape. I select everything, press enter again to enter edit mode. I go to the shape builder and cut out this one side I don't want. I'm holding Alt. When you come default it is plus, but I hold Alt, take out the red. Ew, something wrong. Okay. Okay. Select everything, press enter. It should be the what's going on. What's wrong? Okay. Let me see. Press enter, should be that too. This one seems to work, and this one is killing us. I have no clue why. Let's start again. Circle, pen tool, 3 points, one in the middle, one at the end. This I'll just change the mirroring options. Yeah, maybe. Let's see. I'll see if it's a hierarchy thing. So I'll just blow this out again. I'll flatten out outline stroke, and I can duplicate. Another place I can use this mirroring tool because I want it to flip to the other side. I'll just press this, group them. I like the space in between. Select this and select this. Give it the alignment options I want. Select everything again. Press enter. Press enter to enter the edit mode. Shape builder tool. Hopefully it works now. Yeah, all good. So I don't know what was going on. But yeah, you can see some anchor points here that are left because the geometry was not so clean. You can do a bit of house cleaning. Just pay attention to those small details and select them and just delete them. So now we have this. Another thing we can do is this is a shape on top of the circle, and this is a non-destructive way to design because now we can select the color of this and select whatever color we want for this inside. White. We can go a bit pink if we want to. But another destructive way to design is if you select all of this, because it's shape builder, because there's an intersection. If you enter the shape builder again and you press alternate, shape builder, press alternate, you can remove these. Again, that's your choice. It depends on what you want to do. But now you can't put color in here. It's just an empty. It's just some white space. It's only going to inherit the color of the background. But most of the time, I like to design in non-destructive ways where I can have full control over the shape layers later, because I might want to change this whole background to pink now, for instance, and then this is pink and I have to change it to, let's say, green, and I want the actual ball to be white. In that case, if you were destructive with it, you wouldn't be able to do all of these things. Now, in the last way, the more professional, more stressful way to create this ball, I'll show you that where you draw everything by hand, at least apart from the second. So let me delete the rulers. Okay. Okay, we have the circle. We are going to use the pencil again. Similar technique. It still has the same inflection points, but this time we're going to be creating times 2 of the number of points we need, because we're creating a shape right out of the bat, meaning that we're not going to need to outline stroke. We're not relying on the stroke width to create the depth of the stroke at all. So we'll create that point here, another point here, another one. Let's reduce this so that we can see what we're doing well. Let's start again. So pen tool. Click here, click here, click here. We give it, so this determines the width, like if you really think about it. So we click here, try to match where this is, click here, and then click here, and this again. So it's a very similar thing to what we did here, but just that we're taking everything into our own hands. And then these are the points where stuff calls, and we'll just give it the same thing. So we have something kind of similar. And we can move this individually to make sure it's, so we want something really straight. We blow out the radius a bit, do the same thing. So this step just gives us the ability not to first outline stroke, because this is not, we're not relying on the stroke for this intercept here. What I'll do now is I just reflect this. I reflect this, I'll group it again so that stuff is just a bit accurate and like properly positioned. I enter edit mode again, find my shape builder tool, and do the cutting. So here I cut here, cut here, cut here, and I have my shapes. Can group this. I will go and group again. Yeah, okay. I can just color. I'll change this from a stroke to fill, because I don't want the stroke, I want the fill color. Make it white. So you notice that every variation has given us very, very not very, very different results, but dissimilar results. This is perfect geometrically. This is it might be wonky, it has bigger strokes. This is a little bit more interesting because things are not perfect at all. So it depends on what you're going for. So that's the basics of illustration. Basically, you're just going to be building shapes, cutting shapes, adding shapes, bending anchor points and the likes. So that brings me to this ball, the bane of our existence. How do we tackle this? So firstly, we'll drop the opacity. So whatever design you want to do, you can bring it as far as your sketch is good. Somebody asked if you must know how to draw. No, not really. You can get an image, trace over the image. You can go to AI and tell it, oh, I have this image of a person, but I want you to put it in this fisheye lens or perspective. Then you kind of trace out that stuff. You must not need to draw. Just get your reference, and create the shapes that are most necessary. The thing with illustration, like I said, you have to learn to abstract stuff. What do I mean by that? So if you look at this illustration, I'm not trying to be very realistic. See this guy's hand. This is not a hand, right? In real life, but it's a hand in what I'm doing. So you just have to be careful with how much you are leaving in your illustration, because if you are trying to go hyper realistic, you can see that this can be a slow process that will take time. But if that's what you are going for, absolutely, we need people like you in the world. Please go ahead. I do it sometimes, but not all the time. It's not something I voluntarily do, because the more I think about what I can remove to still keep that shape recognizable for that object, it makes things more interesting to me. So this is our ball now. Again, we can do all 3 different ways to get this ball. But when I was creating this, I think I've forgotten the one I did. But just when you can do everything, it's like the one that just seems quicker to you at the time or whatever you're feeling. But we can attempt to do a circle. If in your assignment you do a circle for me, I don't mind that. So let's give this a stroke so that when you're tracing over an image, just put a stroke so that you can still see what's going on in the background because stuff can get really messy. If I show you the number of lines and stuff here, you see like it can get really indistinguishable when your shapes are a lot, right? Um yeah, it can get like that. So we can try to match this. We'll remove the fill so that we can see the outline. You can make it a brighter color if need be. Um, yeah, then we can try to match it and just push it out a bit. This works, right? This works. But you see that this Mayon just kind of has a bump. It feels like it's just really fast and it's expanding as it's moving. This is just going to feel like an oval. Also depends on the way you shade it as well. So what I did was I used the pen tool and I created inflection points. So again, circle has 4 points, but mine doesn't really. You can get away with it with 4 points. Let's try 4 points. So this is the first point. This one is here. The difference is that it's not going to be unlike that circle we created. It was like on the cardinals, everything was perfectly opposite from each other. But the beauty of this is not going to be opposite. It's just going to be anyhow, and then we're not going to use the exact mirroring. So from this shape, this kite shape, we can get our ball. I can choose to select these individual points one by one and do this, But if there's space for you to select everything at once, then just do that and press that. So already I have a circular shape, if you will. I'm going to reduce the weight on this so I can still see the outlines of my drawing, my sketch. I'll line this up a bit better. So you see places where we're losing the curve, like here. We're losing this curve here. This works, but me, I try to challenge myself to make it as organic as my hand drew it. So I can continue. This is, again, like I said, we always try to do the hard things here. That's what will make you stand out. So I'm just going to fiddle with these Bezier curves ever so slightly. So this one now, you can see that when I push this other one is moving, but that's not what I want. I only want to affect this one on the right. So I'm just going to do this mirror only the angle. So here I can just give it a custom length. Here I can nudge it a bit. I can bring the whole anchor point down so that it matches. Here as well, I'll do the same thing. That looks good. Looks okay. Then this one is where we have interesting things going on. So this, if I try to leave it the way it is with this going on, is mirroring both the angle and the length, we're going to have a problem because the more I try to fit this one to this curve, the more this one will move. That's a problem. So we can just mirror only the angle and then get this one to fit where we want it to go. If you see that what you're trying is not really working, maybe sometimes it's just like where you put that peak point. So I've moved the peak point now and you see it's getting there, and I can just move this a bit. And I've gotten my curve there, and this one I'll just move it a bit. And we have something good. But this place doesn't seem so smooth. I might just touch it up a tiny bit. It takes a lot of fiddling with though sometimes. So I have this weird shape that is meant to be a ball. It looks like an egg. Wait, I'm sorry, this is still disturbing me. Still disturbing me a bit. Okay. I think I can let that go. Now to create this stuff, these lines in between, we can do the same thing we did. We can't do this because this is perfectly circular. So if we put a circle here, that won't really work for this sketch. We can choose to do this one where we relied on the stroke for. We relied on the stroke width to create the shape. So I'll just do that now and show you. So I'll look at this whole shape, right, and think of it as one line. Just think of the line in between these two shapes, and then I'll create my point. So this is going to be a peak point. This is one point. This is going to be a peak point. This is going to be, I think, an inflection point. I hope I'm using that word correctly. Then we'll just overshoot it. So another rule of thumb in illustrations is try to overshoot your lines a lot, because that's what's going to create the intersection when you go into the shape tool. So because I have this overshot now, I go into the shape tool and I go to the shape builder and I click here. You see that it creates this shape, and I can just either remove it or make it a standalone shape by pressing this. If for instance I didn't blow this line out, if I didn't overshoot this line, let's just put it inside, and it's just ever so close to our outline shape. If I select everything and enter the shape builder, no matter how much I try to make it work, you can see that that intersection is not created. It's still treating this as just that ball shape that we had. So always try to overshoot your lines. Like, you can be very generous with it. So if I just take this out, doesn't matter how much. Sometimes if your stroke is too wide, this now for this stroke, I mean, if we make this too big, you might think that this is still touching it. But if you go to the outline mode, sometimes you just find that this is the stroke. This is because it's a stroke. Figma won't treat this outline, this or these dashed lines as a point of reference. It's just going to treat this line that you can select. So be watchful of that as well when you're working with strokes. So just go back to 6 here. So now we have this very, very, very weird line that I want to fix because it's up in my eyes. So what we do is, again, we enter shape, the edit mode, press enter or double click. We select this point and select this point, and we'll just give it curves for now. So it's now very close to like what we're looking for. We'll just play with this in terms of positioning. We can build this out a bit so that we get that curve that we want. Sometimes you might have to play with this stuff really well to get it there. Yeah. So this now we can move this a bit more. I'll move this a bit more. Oh. Move this a bit more, then move this inside. Yeah. So most of the time when I'm doing illustrations, I watch movies because you can take time sometimes, and it's therapeutic if you are not in a hurry. Just like maybe put on a movie or like really good music, an audio book, and just keep going. So now we can blow out the stroke till it kind of matches what we had there, right? And we are kind of settled. This curve is not looking the best, so I would just try my best again to kind of play with it to make it look smoother. I don't want this to mirror both angle and length. Okay, so yeah, I think that works. Same thing for this. Can start outside because we always want to overshoot our lines when we're dealing with the shape builder. Do the same thing here. The stroke on here is 62, but we'll get there. Now we'll just enter again, shape builder, round this off, make sure it works. This was a fairly easy challenge because we don't have so many anchor points. So I'll make this 62. Now, what we have to do is, again, like we did, we would outline the stroke, and then get a shape. So, outline stroke, same thing here. What is it? Outline stroke. Now, I can give this a feel so that I can know what I'm dealing with better, and then remove it, just like similar to what we did. So, for this step, you notice I'm not trying to align things because our stuff is not aligned. We're trying to make it more organic, other than what we did here. So, select everything. I press enter. Go to the shape builder. So it becomes a repetitive thing. If you can get these processes down, you can illustrate almost anything. The only differentiator will now be your style of sketch, your use of color, angles, and storytelling. But in terms of execution, it's most likely what you're going to be doing all the time, you know. So I press option here to take this out, so take this out, take this out, and take this out. And yeah, we have a very, very weird, interesting looking shape ball, which is what I really want. So now I'm just going to pick my colors and switch this stuff, you know. On this sketch, so the assignment, I would provide a sketch that has this. Okay. Let me show you guys. What app do I use? I use Procreate, but any app would work. You can use paper. I started with paper. Any app would work. You can get Fresco, any cheap one, Fresco, Ibis Paint, um, Autodesk Sketchbook, whichever one just works. The app does not have a. The app does not have any. I'm on the word when they had me. The app does not like increase or reduce like your creativity. It's just a tool if you really think about it. So for this Ikoyi bridge, right, in the initial sketch we didn't have this there. So I'd like everybody to sort of get this stuff down before our next class. Just the ball and the shading and the effects I show you. Then I'll provide a sketch with the stuff on top so that that's easy to go with. Because the initial sketch didn't have this. I had to improvise and do this myself without a sketch. When you are more experienced, that would come in. But I don't want to just waste time when the most important things are already kind of here. So at this point, when I have my primary subject down, that's the only thing in our sketch. I can turn off my reference layer. This is why the layers are important, right? People name their layers, and I would not lie to you, I don't name my layers, except I plan to animate stuff. I don't name my layers. But name your layers. Please do that. So I can turn off my sketch, right? So I have this stuff. I have three shapes. I have the background, the ball, overall ball, and I have these individual shapes. So the next cool thing we want to do is this looks really flat. What will make things jump off is when you start to add dimension. Dimension comes with light. You know, the first place we'll start with is if you notice there is a small circle here on this ball that just like a shadow. When you start to add shadows to stuff, it kind of gives it depth. So we're just going to this was not in the sketch, but we'll just create a really small. Again, we can use a circle here. It's over. It doesn't have to be perfect. So those 4 points, we just turn everything to curves. Now I'm going to take out this stroke because it's bothering me. I need it as a fill. It's too much. Turn this off. Turn it around. Make sure it fits. I'll bring the stripes upward because this is affecting the main body. Ideally, it's meant to affect all of it, but for now, just to see what the shape looks like, we are going to bring these stripes up, and that's why layers are important. So you see on this layers panel, this is the shape I just created, this vector 80. Vector 78 is this stripe, and vector 79, so I can just bring them above. If you don't want to go to the layers panel, you can press the right closing bracket, right? And the third way to do it, the longest one is to go to, bring to front. Okay. So this shortcut on your keyboard, bring it to front. So we have this now. It looks a bit more interesting. There's dimension to it. So I'm just going to pick this color and drop the brightness a bit on saturation. So I have that. It feels like this, it feels a bit cut here though. We're going to fix that later. It feels like the ball was like half there, and now looks like more like a rugby ball. At this stage, we're going to be looking at other things like more dimensionality. If you notice here, this white stripe is affected by a shadow inside. Let me turn off the. Wait, let me just duplicate this first. Let me turn off the effects I have on this thing. If I turn off the texture, turn off the noise layer. See, okay, let me turn off the blue as well. So you see this shadow that was created here. There are multiple ways of doing it, but Figma makes it really easy. I'll just teach you the simplest one for now for this course. Um, so you go into it, there's no dimension to this thing. It just feels like a line that's cutting through the ball. But if we select this, go to effects and go to inner shadow, you see that I already created something really small for us. All we have to do now is fiddle with it in terms of direction of light. So for me, the light is coming in my scene. You always have to like decide where your light is coming from. In this scene, for me, my light is coming from here, this side. Okay? So this is going to be the shadow area. It's just like the opposite side. So in this scene, because I've put the shadow here, it only makes sense that our light is coming from here. So if the light is coming this way, the shadow on this thing will be cast kind of like this way. And to affect that here, we have the position X and Y. So the X axis is the horizontal one from left to right, and the Y axis is from top to bottom. So if you combine those two in interesting ways, you can get really interesting like shadows, right? But what we want is our shadow is going in the negative X direction. So to the left is negative, and it's coming down on the Y axis, that's negative as well. So if I just slide this to the left, you see we have that shadow there. If I slide this down, I'm sorry, the Y is positive when you're going down. Slide this down a bit. So I have my shadow already. I can change the color. There's the thing about warm and cool shadows and stuff. Can get into that later, but right now I'm really loving. I've always loved purple. But I like when I use like the purple shadow. It just gives it a bit more finesse instead of going completely black. Then I blow it out. So this is way too much right now, and I'll just maybe take it back a bit. Maybe reduce the blow, and then reduce the opacity so that it just feels a bit more. So now you can see that there's some depth to this compared to this one. This has no depth at all. With Figma, to shorten your time, sometimes you can create these effects and save them. But the kind of illustrations we're creating are pretty organic. So saving stuff in one direction might not really affect this one. So this has like some negative values to the X. This needs those negative values too, but it's not going to be the exact same point. So what we can do here is just, have to repeat the same process. I'll take it to the negative, bring this down. Once I'm fine with it, I can, for consistency, I can pick the same color. Before you start a project, you can pick all your colors, save them, makes things faster. But I like to go with the flow. That's just me. It always worked. Then the blow on here is 24.4. In the spirit of keeping things whole, let's make this 24.4. Here to make it, no, sorry, make that 24. This one make it 24. Now there's depth to this our ball. If we turn this off now, if we turn off the effects, you see how flat it looks like. It makes a whole lot of difference, right? To add the shadows. Then the next thing would be on this ball, I had just very slightly varying colors. Yeah, so I just had this other one that's slightly darker, just to add some visual interest. Something you can skip, it's not important. But how we can achieve that is we can just duplicate this, make sure that these are on top, then give this, we can select this color, this is always the base color, and then we can just drop it a tad bit. You can blow it out a bit so that it looks like it's covering way more space. If just increasing the shape does not work, you can always fiddle with this. This does not have to be perfect. But there's no police coming to check this shape. There's no illustration police checking this one at least, so I can do whatever I want. I'm creating the universe. It's my world. I can choose for balls to work like this. So now that I have that, I'm pretty much done if you really look at it. The other parts, a tougher part to handle is, you notice this ball, this shadow, right, has to affect this light inside here. But right now, what we have is that this shadow is still the same. So we can duplicate the shape, Command D, give it a stroke so that we can see. Just reduce it because we're dealing with very fine lines. So then remove the fill, take this way down. So I can select this and this. So what I need to do is I need to cut out this part to this point so that I can give it a different color and then match the shadows. I can use the pencil to create a line like this. That would work. But I'm trying to make sure that the shape it follows this shape, this darker shape. I'm trying to make sure it follows that exact thing. And an easy way to do that is just duplicate the shape. But we have to pay attention to this place. If I do this now, let's say, let me hide this green one so that you understand what I'm talking about. I'm going to hide that shape and lock it. So you're going to need your layers a lot because sometimes things can get overwhelming when they are not done and when they are not in the right place. So if I select these two shapes now and I press enter, what I want to deal with is from here to here. But because this circle is not big enough, it's going to, if I select this and make it its own new shape, you see it has created a new shape for me, but this is not affected. So I want to expand this my cutting tool, this cutting circle, in a way that I can still maintain this curve here, just ever so slightly, even though it changes just a tad bit. I can maintain that. Oh, I wonder why it's small now. Jesus. Time goes by when you're having fun. Fast. Okay, so should we move now, or we should wait till it's like 5 minutes to go? Hi guys. Um. Okay. So I was trying to expand the shape a bit so that it gives us some extra room. So I think this is enough, if I'm not mistaken. Just to just take this up a bit. So it's going to cut just where this, since these are the two shapes involved, it's just going to cut from here to here, from here to here. So this is the separation line. I press enter if I'm sure that that's what I want. So when I click the shape, you see that it's giving me a whole shape here, another weird thing that I cut this what I want. So I've clicked this plus, I've clicked it, and if you notice, I've created another shape. So now I can delete this one. I don't need that anymore. That's created this for me. But there's a problem. The problem is that this now is treated as a separate shape by itself, which is what we want. But we don't want the shadow to look this way. We want it to blend seamlessly. And where that problem is the shadow on, I think the y-axis is still fine. We just have to move the one on this horizontal axis, like to try to hide this as much as possible. So we'll just kind of move this. No, yeah, okay. Y is fine. We'll move this one and increase this one a bit. So we just fiddle with these things until it looks a bit seamless. Like there is no line here, which can be hard, but you do the closest you can and then just can move. For this one, maybe we reduce it a bit so that it doesn't feel like that much of a hard line, but currently that's what we can achieve. So I'm using the easy way to get this done with the drop shadows, but sometimes you can use a mask. You can put a shape inside and blow it out. That way you have very, very fine controls of what's going on. But this is the easiest way, and we're going to do that for now. Over time, we can start to find like the harder things and work with that. Obviously, since this space is dark, I want to nudge the white down a bit so that it's just a tad bit dark, and then we'll go back to put on that our shape that we hid. So Now there's a small difference, right? Maybe reduce this darkness a bit because it's too dark. So you can see that that line is perfect. Like you're just following that line on the exact same positions X and Y. We have this. This is where the interesting things now start to happen because in terms of replication of this ball, we have something really good. So what I can do now is I can just get like the color so that it looks a bit more similar to what I did. Try to match these colors, and I'll select the shape. I can go here and try to mix the color if I want, or I can press this to pick an existing color. This is called the eyedropper tool. Pick this to select an existing color. Pick this, press I is the shortcut for the eyedropper. Pick this to select another existing tool. And I can group all of this. Now that I've grouped all of this, we have the ball. What I need now is to now create the other effects that we created here. So because the ball is in motion, Figma has done this really cool thing that you can add a progressive blur. You always had blurs, but now I can add a progressive blur. But let's fix the background first so that we can see that effect when we start to make it. So this background is a gradient. And why I chose this gradient is because I wanted some form of impact from the right side. It feels like something is happening here, and that's where the ball was hit from. So this is just a linear gradient. So every shape, when you go to the fill tool, has different ways of filling them. So this is a solid color. We can fill it with a solid color. We can go to the gradient tool, and the gradients have different ones. There's the radial gradient where you have your gradient coming out from like a center point like in circumferences. You have angular. Angular, you can just have a very, very sharp angle. Base used to use this as their design style at some point until they rebranded. And this diamond one is like the angular one, where it just creates this diamond for you, that you can play with. But what we want right now is a linear one. But before that, we can do patterns as well. So you can create these small dotted patterns if you want. You can create a weird shape. I'll just use the pen tool quickly. Let me just demonstrate this. So you can create a weird shape like this and say you want to use this as a pattern. Maybe give it a stroke outside. Right, do it outside. Select the frame again. Select the pattern. Select source. Once you press that, it gives you this plus and you can select the shape. So now I have that. Now reduce the scale, reduce the spacing, and just play with this until I have what I want. I can make it an image if I want to. I can make it a video, and then this new shader thing that Figma added, but I have not gotten the hang of that just yet. But our interest here is a linear gradient. Now this linear gradient has been sort of created for us, but these are not the colors we want, and this is not the direction we want. So go back. You can yourself move things around if you want to. You can move things around by yourself. But there are also handles you can play with. So let's go back to where we started from. You can play with this. You can rotate it in 45. Was that a 45-degree move just now? Sorry, 90 degrees. So you're just going to move it like that. So what we want is something like this. Now we're just going to match our colors. If, for instance, you created something like, let me just make a very deliberate mistake here. Let's say we do this. We pick this color and we pick this other color, but it's not in the same way that I created here. So that other handle close to this rotate one has this inversion thing where you can flip the gradient. So you can flip it to the other side. So our scene is kind of ready. We can still play with these curves a bit if you want this to be more, less, but usually the farther apart they are, the more of a seamless blend you have. If I bring this very close, you can see that hard line there. And it's a bit soft, but you can tell. But if I take it outside, like it spreads that a bit more. If I take this more out, it's going to spread it more. But you just need to find that really sweet balance. So now we have this. We will now go back to our ball so that we can add that small glow. Sorry, I just want to fix this. I didn't notice before. I'm just trying to match this to the end. I noticed that I didn't pay attention to that before, my bad. Yeah, something like this. So this ball now, I want to give it a blow. Again, effects, when you go to effects, there's so many, right? We touch on a few of them. But what we want now is a layer blur. So this layer blur allows you to blur layers like this, you know. But what we want is a progressive blur because we want to keep things a bit realistic. The start of our shape is here, the ball, and then this is the end. So the progressive blur allows us to create like a gradient again. You can create a specific blur amount here and another specific amount here. So it is a bit dynamic. So on here I have 0, here I have like 100. I think that's the max. So this end is 4. Just brings out to 100. So it looks like there's some form of motion. I'll take it back so that it doesn't affect too much of the ball. I can move this in so that like that end is all that is affected, right? If you've held a tennis ball before, you'll be able to tell that it has some textures, like some folds. If you use the texture feature in the effects panel again, so we can stack up effects like this. So you can keep adding, you can even add another, okay, you can't add another layer blur, but you can add other ones like background blur, you can add the drop shadow if you need, but we're going to add texture. So if you see, as I've added it already, it gives me this zhuzh feeling, according to a friend of mine. We can now, increase the size of that. But if you keep increasing the size, you see that the effect is not so much, right? So what we do is we keep the size a bit small, but we increase the radius, and that gives it a bit more. See, so that even affects our drop shadows. It just kind of makes things look a bit more realistic, that feeling. So we have that. This is all well and good. This is basically our scene. What I did, the other things I did were adding the speed lines, right? So the thing with speed lines is that they're a bit tricky. Our ball has a certain perspective. You see that this edge is like kind of like front facing. So anything, any speed ball, any speed line that's coming, you have to kind of plan the trajectory of the ball, like the path that the ball is taking. So if you think about it, if this is it, there needs to be a vanishing point. So that's the point. That's the point the ball is coming from, and then you take this out again. But it just kind of has to touch it a bit. That's sort of what we're looking at. So we just need to create. These are now our guides. We just need to create lines that follow that pattern, that same angle. So I can use the pen tool here again, and just give myself that first guiding line. Let's change the color so we can pick this. Let me pick this color. I'll increase the stroke small. Okay. So I have that first guiding line. So as we go beneath, you would see that. As we go under now, you notice it's sort of like a V shape. If you keep creating this and just straight like this and straight, you might lose a form of realism. Like I said, it can get tricky. It's just going to look a bit tacky because we want to keep that perspective like it's coming from someplace really far, right? So we need that guiding line below as well. Same way we've done this. Pen tool, touch here, touch like that vanishing point, a point where we can't see the origin of the ball. So the thing about speed lines is we already have this now. So we just have to follow the same angle with the other ones we make and just vary the length. So we can just put one here. We can duplicate this by holding Option or Control and D, take it higher, then send it to the back so that part is not showing. Just put that there. Then we can put another one here. Just make sure that it kind of follows this line, this guiding line. The only one that's meant to be straight is the one in the middle, because if you keep hatching this in triangles, there's always going to be that middle point that can't take a diagonal line. It has to be straight, most likely center point. Yeah, you can just put one here. So for myself, when I was creating this, I just put this small one here to like kind of indicate a spin. And how I did that was I put this. I just created 3 points. for my curve, then put this in the middle and give it like a stroke width, made it white. Fill it with a bit. Yeah, that's our ball. So how do we create these other balls in the background? We'll just duplicate this since this is a group already. Scale this down. When you hold K, so if I can scale this up, but some of my effects won't scale. See, if I scale this up, you'll notice that you see the blur is reducing. But if I press K on my keyboard, instead of, if you're on V, if you press V, V is for the move tool, this move tool, right? You can come here and click it when you press V. If you are trying to scale stuff, you see this arrows facing away from each other up and down as one. But if you're on the scale tool, it's going to show as two. That means that it's scaling everything, including your effects, strokes, and all of that. So if I scale this with this, you see that it maintains all the proportions of everything, the shape, the shadows, the texture as well. So I'm just going to scale this down because I want it to remain proportional. I'll bring this here, we scale it a bit more. Then I'll go and add another effect, which is layer. Sorry. So this is my layer blur now. I have to take away the progressive one because I want the whole ball to be blurred, not just the end of the ball. So I'll go click. I can go from here and take it back to uniform and scale it. Or I can remove it altogether and just start again and put layer blur and then increase it until I'm happy with that. Send it to the back because I want that depth. Do the same thing. I'll just duplicate it, press K again to scale it down, way down, so that it feels like there's another ball in that space, like way behind, And that's it, guys. Put the logos you need to put the text you need to put, and you're sorted. So, yeah, so that's it for the first exercise. I think it is simple enough. I'd see how you guys react to it and how much you can create, and we'll know how to move. So now we can go into the questions part.
Thank you, Jeffrey. At least if you have your questions, you can actually raise up your hands and then
Sorry, I didn't hear.
begin with. Okay. I say thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
I was saying that if anyone have question, they should just indicate by raise of hand, and then we'll give them the floor.
Cool.
All right.
Can this illustration be what? Okay. Can this still be possible? Yeah. I answered that. Like when I started, I'm not really a really good artist. I don't draw really well, not as much as I would like. But you can illustrate without drawing. You just need an eye for details. You can get a workflow could be getting an image of what you want and tracing it. That works. When you trace it, you can now add your own spin on it and maybe tweak a few things, color, size, orientation. You can also go, if you have a particular scene in mind, you can go to AI, mix and combine pictures, tell it to create a scene for you. Then you bring it to Figma, trace out the shapes you need to trace out, and that works perfectly well. It might even work better than me trying to sketch all I do, So yes, drawing does not hinder you. Femi.
All right, Jeffrey. It's Femi. Okay. I just wanted to know if, okay, for some person that might be having colors with color, like the blends of color issues with that, do you suggest that the person take look for inspirations, like illustrations, and pick up inspirations from them, from already made work, and
Yeah,
then use that to kind of practice color blends and all that, because sometimes color actually have like a major role to play in illustration.
for sure. Yeah, you can. Everybody has to start from somewhere. When I first started, like I believe that the taste of a designer and what we design is just years of compounding reference, right? So these colors I've chosen are not because I'm really good with colors. I've just seen them used really well somewhere else that I might not even remember, and it feels natural to me now. So if you're just starting out, you're having a problem with colors, go to Pinterest, look at the colors people are choosing and use them, play with them, try to break it. For everything I make, I always make so many variations, testing out different things. You see, for my colors on here, I'm coming, I'll get to you. For my colors on here, I first made this and I decided to change it to this. This guy's hair was pink before. So it's just a thing of constantly playing with what you have to see the most appealing thing visually. Also study nature as well. God has created a very, very beautiful place on earth. Most color variations come from there. For instance, green and pink work really well. People will tell you it's because they are kind of opposing on the color wheel. But if you go out in nature, you see a lot of really dark green leaves with pink flowers and reddish flowers and stuff. So if you pay attention to nature, you see those things. You see the sky, the fades of blue and yellow. They are complementary on the color wheel. It happens in nature. So pay attention to these things. Look at a plant and see how the colors work. Look at a watermelon, for instance, the darker shades of green, the lighter one, and then the pink inside. So these things all come from a place. So just pay attention to those things as a designer. Just leave, and observe stuff. You get a better hang of colors. So Unawu, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Please forgive me if I'm not, but your turn.
Oh, no, it's fine. Thank you so much, Jeff. I'm really enjoying everything with the illustration. But one thing I wanted to ask, yes, it's the animation you put with these illustrations. From your presentation, I really, really, really enjoyed those very subtle movements, and it almost made me laugh because I really love animations and cartoons. So I wanted to ask, how would we implement this in our own kind of display, and at what um I don't know how to set this question. I didn't really place it in my head very well. At what point can an animation like that be useful for any kind of display? Think about this thing you just said with the tennis and Lagos. If
Mm.
you're about to put an animation to it, at what point would it be useful in illustration? I really hope I set a good question properly.
I'm confused. At what point will it be useful for the client or what you're making it for? Or at one point will it be useful for you as a person? Okay, for the client. It depends on what the deliverables are. Practicing as a more studio facing designer and a creative director, in my past years I've understood the value of motion way more. When I started, I just used to think of myself like as a one-man designer. I design what I need to design for brands, and then I'll just create the logo and give it to them. But when you want to play on the bigger stages, you find that motion is part of the identity. That's what breathes life into it. You think of branding as creating a human being now, for instance. You get to choose the hair color, the eyes, the the size of lips, and you can choose the way they walk, the way they move, the way they run. That's motion. So think of it like that. Like motion always breathes life into everything. They might not be paying for it, but it's sure going to make your work look better and more presentable. So for when I created those illustrations, I was like, they have to move. If they were static, okay. But them moving, I was able to like communicate way more emotions with that. So most of the time it lies on you. If you are the creative director, always push for motion. If you can't afford it, if you can't get somebody to do that for you, or if you can't learn to do it yourself, always try to get that motion thing going. It's really, really important in design work. There is no top design studio that presents their work without motion. Look at Pentagram, Koto, these guys, there's always motion somewhere. Even though it's just one letter that's moving, it's moving. So um always in for that. I hope that answers your question. Does it?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Yes, thank you.
All right, great. Maga, Olutu, let's go.
Yes, good evening once again, and thank you for such a wonderful presentation. I think one of the questions I would ask is, can that your motion, if using motion, can you achieve it on Figma?
Yes, you
If
can.
not, what you can? Wow.
Yeah, but let me
There,
explain. Let me
okay.
explain. Figma just released this motion thing, but it's limited. The only things that I can animate now are position, scale, size, and rotation. These are the properties I can animate, and maybe colors. But for bigger work, for more freedom and capacity, you might want to use After Effects. After Effects, I can animate this ball moving in a certain way that I feel like it can expand and kind of like really cartoony stuff. Right now in Figma, I can only just animate it moving from here to here and maybe becoming bigger, which is okay. But for more intensive stuff, you want to look at Adobe After Effects. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Then second, I don't know, is the class recorded? If it's not, it's fine. We'll work with what we already
It was
have.
supposed to be recorded, but I don't know. We'll check in with Jerry afterwards. If possible.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. We'll
Face
be
to face.
expecting your pack.
Face. All right. Who? Somebody wanted to ask. Oh, yeah. Now, please go.
Uh, Sorry, you just mentioned After Effects, and that just created another question.
Okay.
Um, what format do you export your design from into After Effects? Because I tried it and it gave me a layout of everything, every
Okay.
single thing. Thank you. Go ahead.
Um. So I'm not a motion designer by any feat, but my friend is here and he can speak about that. Also, can you just walk him through how that works? On like a brief overview.
All
He's
right.
a co-founder at Tensor Unit as well.
All right. Good evening, guys. I'm Usi, and I'm a motion designer amongst other things, and I'm a co-founder of Things and Unit too. So, my bro, can you please walk me through what you did exactly from Figma to After Effects?
Okay, I was actually finding better ways to move components on Figma, say a user interface, and try to put a little bit of motion to it on After Effects. But the exporting format gets very confusing for me. So I looked online and they said I need to get something about a PSD file, a Photoshop document. I have to go export from Photoshop and put in After Effects. But that didn't seem right, didn't seem normal. So I needed to ask this question. So I didn't know it was today's um topic was a good time to ask until he mentioned until Jeff mentioned After Effects. So I wanted to know the exporting formats that will be very useful from Figma or whatever can take the design into After Effects. Thank you.
All right, bro. So, time is not really on our side, but let me tell you my workflow. So, for some of the projects that we do, Jeff designs in Figma, and then I take this design from Figma to After Effects. But the thing is, I have a plugin I use, man, because I've been where I've been where you are, and it is frustrating. So I have to pay for a plugin called Overload. Now, the beautiful thing about Overload is that it works on Illustrator to After Effects, it works on Photoshop to After Effects, and it also works from Figma to After Effects. So what it does is it has several functions, but in a nutshell, you can select a frame. For example, now just imagine you select this frame housing a Lagos illustration now. Just click the frame and you can literally just send it. It's like you're shipping it to After Effects and to appear just like this, right? But I think there are one or two features that it doesn't support all the way, but I can assure you that that plugin is worth it, and it's something that I've been using over the past couple of months, and it has changed my, you know, my shaping game really from Figma to After Effects. Prior to that, it was a very painstaking process. Sometimes I export as PNGs, like I export at 4x so that the resolution can be high, so that my video is still, sharp and high res, right? So overload is something that I think we should look into.
Thank you, Osi. Any other questions from anybody? You know that thing they used to do in primary school? Ask your question now, or ask my own questions. Abi? Okay, now you laugh. Very good. All right. So if there are no more questions, I think the Pixel Clan they would organize a group chat that I'll be very active on. Just send your questions away. If you are designing at a specific time and you have a problem with a handle, maybe record a voice note, take a picture. I can help. You can share your Figma file, drop a comment. But between now and morning, I'll share my sketch file and this Figma file or a Figma file that you might not be able to edit, but you can just see hierarchy of things. Yeah. So, Olinda, please go.
Good evening, everyone. This is not a question. It's not the Discord. I don't know. I can't access it. If you can help me with it.
Linda, please, have you tried the new link I sent? Have you tried the new link I sent?
Yeah, no, I didn't see.
Okay,
Can
okay,
you
please try.
resend? Okay.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
All right. So that's all for me.
Okay. Wow. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I actually did enjoy the class too today, and I believe everyone too. Also, please note that the conversation continues in the Discord channel. I think when Jeffrey drops the Figma file, any other materials we'll be needing for us to start designing, please make sure to actually post, share whatsoever you're working on the Discord channel, and then ask your questions. I believe Jeffrey will attend to your questions on the Discord channel. And then any other information we are supposed to pass across to you till the next time we are having our session, which is to be on August on Saturday, same time, 8 to 10 p.m. and then same venue, which would be Google Meet. So then we'll be giving you information that is regarding to the workshop, and also let's make sure we engage and then drop whatsoever we are working on, so that it will be encouraging to Jeffrey to come on Saturday, encourage and motivated to actually tutor us better. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining today's section. We really do appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a nice night.